Martin.
Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to introduce you to Chowdhury, who's one of our lecturers here at TBS, one of our permanent professors who joined the team in September.
Great.
So he's going to be leading the workshop this afternoon.
Super. That's great. Nice to have you on board.
Nice to meet you, Martin. How are things your end?
Great. Yeah, great. Enjoying the seminar so far, that's for sure.
That's great.
How did you guys get on this morning? Neil, Elaine, Tara?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, very insightful. Looking forward to the rest of the day.
Good. Thank you. And the internet connections have been holding up?
Yeah, surprisingly. Here in Galway.
Okay, good. I know it's Zoom
Sorry,
can sometimes be...
my mic wasn't taking it.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, really enjoying it so far. It's very good.
Brilliant. Well, we're glad to hear that. Yeah, the internet connection sometimes, I noticed that Ransom, I was wondering if it was my own, but there were some words that Ransom said that would kind of go up and down. I was like, oh no, I know it's not going to hold out. And then it came back again nicely. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was experiencing similar difficulties as well, but it was okay.
Good. I hope it didn't impact it too much.
No, not too much.
Okay.
No, I think it was fine.
Brilliant. Well, Thomas, I spoke. You guys finished early. I wasn't expecting that, and I had been taken into a call, so I came back and there was no one in the room. I felt so lonely.
We were hiding down the back.
Yeah, I know. I was like, where are they? So I had a little chat with Thomas and just after, and he seemed really pleased. He said you guys were super intelligent. You've been asking great questions and everything. So he was pleased with the session.
I trained them well. What can I say?
You did. Brilliant. So we're just gonna wait a few moments while everyone comes in. MSc AI students have exams next week and some projects to hand in by the end of the week. So unfortunately, some of them are being a little bit reticent on appearing. And I think I've been listening off to the side sometimes. So we're hoping they're gonna make it back in for this afternoon. We stressed the importance of the session. But if we don't have a large number that make an appearance, then the groups will be predominantly Irish based, but we're going to mix you up. We're not going to tell you who you're with, and we don't know who you're friends with who, so that also hopefully will get you guys to mix up as well. And have you guys all been studying from home the whole year in the end? Yeah.
Yeah, I have basically. Yeah.
Oh, so actually, you've never really met each other in person?
No, they would have, because they're year 4 of their undergrad.
So it hasn't the group hasn't changed much since last year. Sorry, it was more like thinking of the year. But this year you haven't seen each other in person.
I guess some of you haven't seen each other for over a year now, because it would have been on placement this time last year from January. So it's probably last December 12 months that you're all together as a group. Would that be right?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow, the difficulties of COVID. Our students did make it onto campus in September, hence my confusion. But so I'm sorry that is affected as well up to that point for all of you. Okay, we're at 27. So Soum, do you want to get started and we'll just admit the students as they come in for the rest of the session?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay? Shall we wait a couple of more minutes before we start at 2:20?
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Because I think everyone will be joining after lunch, so there might be.
We've got people coming back from their siestas.
Yeah, they're just finishing off their wine.
No, in Toulouse, we had the hybrid classroom. So we had half of the students in the class and half of the other group joining remotely. So it was good. So they had this routine of alternate weeks they will be in the campus, but
Okay.
but it was only in September and October, and then started from February because we were in lockdown since 31st of October to 15th of January, if I'm not wrong. So
the 15th of December, soon. We
50,
were out of lockdown for Christmas.
no, we were not locked down on we were on 15th of December, but then we were not on lockdown on Christmas, but then the government made the decision on second week of January, and we got our students in campus back slowly,
February.
gradually. Yeah. We
Yeah.
were not under lockdown during Christmas. There were curfew.
We have curfew.
Yeah.
So our students, what Sim was coming back to is that some of our students are on campus at the moment, but they are still on this hybrid system. So they're allowed in for some of the time. But obviously you guys have also been back in lockdown, haven't you, in the last couple of months, I think I heard.
No, well, even when we were out of lockdown, we weren't allowed to have students on campus. So that decision was kind of taken separately. So we've had nobody really on campus since this time last year. And then on a broader societal basis, we've been kind of in and out of lockdown, but effectively they released the breaks for Christmas and people went a little bit crazy. So the numbers went nuts. So we've effectively been on lockdown since Christmas.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So we're not all talking to Galway, we're talking to the whole of Ireland, right? We've got people from Dublin and people from Cork and Limerick and
Yeah, well, all over the place.
And then we can feel like we're talking to a broader geography, can't we?
Yes, there's definitely a couple of Cork people there, and
it's a shame we can't see out of your window.
Sean is over in Malaysia, is it?
Yeah.
And we're talking to Malaysia too. Oh, I'm sorry, Sean, you're going to be going quite late tonight then for you. I didn't.
I'm actually back in Galway.
Oh, you're back in Galway.
Oh, you're back in Galway. Okay.
I think we can make a start.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour from France. And my French is at bonjour level because I have joined TBS last September from UK. And I am an associate professor here in the Information Management Department. And to make things easier, you can just call me Soum, which is the easier and a shorter version of my name. And today we will have this workshop where we will work together on looking at the symbiotic artificial intelligence, more about how humans and AI can coexist in the job environment or in any other environment in the society. So to start with my research interest, artificial intelligence is something I have been working on since last 7 years. But I look at the application of artificial intelligence in various other themes, such as circular economy, how businesses can be sustainable by leveraging the use of AI, then looking at the application of AI for managing crisis and managing disasters in emerging nations, and also how AI with other technologies can help to make businesses more inclusive, like for employee management in the context of mental health and well-being. So I look at AI from the perspective of its application in various domains. That's where my research lies. And I have a number of research projects which I work on, like research grants from various agencies in UK, from British Council, from UK Research on Innovation, and other international grants, specifically looking at how AI plus other integration with other technologies can help small and medium-sized enterprises to achieve business productivity. Now, we work on we have a team from different countries. We work on a number of projects, and what we look at is that going beyond the theory of AI, but rather than the practice of AI in the work environment. We have, when I say we, it's the team. We have a number of projects where we are working on leveraging AI to make, to see the impact of COVID-19 and how organizations can bounce back. And also one of the projects on low carbon economy, how AI can facilitate reducing the carbon footprint. So the things that we work on AI is not only the algorithms and efficiency of the algorithms, but its applications to make a societal impact. The key, when we were discussing this session, the key idea was for us as a group and in the formation of small teams, reflect on what is the impact of AI in various sectors and society, depending on how it is currently being used. So the workshop will be more reflective, but based on facts and what is going on in various sectors and the society. So for the agenda, I will give you a brief overview of AI. I'm not going to repeat things that you may already know. And then we will have the group activity. And then based on the activity, all groups will pitch based on the discussion they have within their teams. And I will join the teams when you are interacting within your groups, like small groups. And we will wrap up with a bit on what COVID-19 has taught us about artificial intelligence, which might be interesting, as well as something that is still up for grabs for everyone. I encourage everyone to ask questions, put it in the chat, or interrupt me as much as you want, unmute yourself, because the idea of the workshop is it's not the lecture, but we work together and we reflect on some of the very pressing issues that needs further discussion and reflection. So feel free to ask as many questions as you want, and I will be more than happy to answer them and try to answer them. So to start with, who uses AI? We have seen the use of AI in our daily life, from Netflix. We are watching Netflix. COVID-19 has made that one of the daily routines initially last year during this time. Spotify, Instagram, in our e-commerce shopping in Amazon. The banks are using it, like HSBC, for fraud detection. It is being also used by logistic companies like DHL to optimize the delivery of services as well as goods, and also by various automobile companies like BMW, Audi, Mercedes, which we call, because it's the whole connected cars. It's being used in the society in different ways. Like we have seen the concept of smart cities earlier in the decade was a concept, but now everyone is realizing it by connecting the sensors in the cities in different ways to help people during travel, help people for shopping and parking, and in a number of ways. So we have seen the use of AI in different sectors in different ways, some for entertainment, some for, I will say, automating a lot of tasks, and in some cases to provide good service or enhance the customer service and experience. So if there are lots of studies about artificial intelligence, and lots of research and lots of surveys has been published by Harvard Business Review, by supply chain professionals, by I would say the e-commerce professionals. But the key key thing is that 93% of the organizations across the developed nations, I'm not talking about developing, emerging countries, but all the developed nations like UK, the European nations, the United States, Australia, they want to, AI is one of the priority in the organization, that leveraging AI to create business value depending on the sector. And the key issue that the companies, what they have said in these surveys, are facing is that the in-house skills, there is a lack of skill in-house to understand and to strategize the AI deployment. And there are three parts to it. One is the development of the AI system, which is the software professionals, the computing science professionals are developing the AI system. But to use it in a company and strategize its use to create short-term and long-term value, there are lack of skills. And lack of skills because there is in order to strategize it, so you have to understand the business, that why I want to use it. But at the same time, you have to understand the limitations of AI, that what AI cannot do. It's not a magic wand that it can do everything, but there are certain limitations for certain sectors. So that's where the in-house skills are limited. And if again we put it in the top barriers, what we find is the 40% is the lack of skilled talent. And lack of skilled talent, again, AI requires multiple skills, from development to design to strategize to deployment to maintenance. So there is a lack of skilled talent. That's why the companies are not very comfortable or not yet leverage the whole value of AI. Now here, one thing we have to understand is that when we talk about big organizations, the large organizations like IBM, Amazon, Microsoft, they are technology providers. They provide the technology to the companies. But 99% of the organizations around the world, if you look at the World Economic Forum data, are small and medium-sized enterprises, and there are many small businesses. And for small businesses to invest in the technology and then use it, there's a big climb and there is a gap. So that's why it's a lack of skilled talent. And because 99% of the businesses around the world are SMEs, even considering developed economies like France, where 99.6% of the businesses are small and medium sized, there is also lack of budget. And with COVID-19, with pandemic, the lack of budget is above the lack of skilled talent, because they have to recover due to the negative impact that the pandemic had on their economy. So yes, so there are barriers. And at the same time, if we look at, this is the data from Harvard Business Review, they put how companies are using AI around the world. And when they say companies, they're not looking at large organizations or technology providers, but small organizations who can be in the health sector, who can be in a part of a supply chain, manufacturing, construction, all sectors. That AI is currently being used a lot in the e-commerce domain, of course, for creating customer value, customer experience, and in the digital business domain. But one of the key areas where AI has been consistently used and finds a lot of application is in the banking industry for detecting and deterring security intrusions, that for maintaining the security of the applications. What they call it as, one way of looking at is like predictive risk management. AI has been used a lot, consistently being used, but the applications now have also moved a lot to the digital business domain and customer facing domain, where the idea is to enhance the customer experience, provide them the good value for their money, streamlining the business processes internally, so that the customers can receive their goods or services in a more efficient manner. So it has been, so AI is not just about, it's not just about customers, it's always used in marketing. Like we see the Facebook adverts that pop up based on the cookies that we have, that our computer stores, has been, but the key issue here is that what we see, what we see, the use of AI are more or less something that we are using in our daily life. But if we enter a business domain, there are more applications of AI. And these applications are more about automation, more about automating processes so that people can spend their time in more non-trivial tasks, which cannot be automated, which requires human judgment, human creativity, human intuition, and human expertise. Because apparently AI is unable to do many things. Like they are not able to persuade someone. They don't have persuasion skills. They don't have empathetic skills that to have communicate with a human being. And in a day-to-day work environment, those are the skills that are very important. Leadership skills. So the way AI has been portrayed in the media, the way we read about AI, there is a bright side as well as a dark side. And there is a gray area which not necessarily everyone is going to talk about. Now, I want to ask you one, you always may get the question, what is AI? I'm not going to ask you the question, what is AI? I'm going to pose a question to everyone here. What is not artificial intelligence? What do you think? Can you give me an example of something which is not artificial intelligence? You can put your responses in the Zoom chat or unmute yourself and speak. So what is not artificial intelligence? Any examples, any ideas, any views are most welcome.
Traffic light.
Traffic lights, not artificial intelligence, yes. Adaptive cruise control in my car. Yes, adaptive cruise control in your car, depending on who is the manufacturer, is not AI. There are some cruise control, Toyota, yeah. Toyota, not necessarily Toyota is AI. Anything else? I was looking for that, like, yes, as human, we are not artificial intelligence. We are sitting here, we are trying to talk to each other. We are communicating. We are not AI. Artificial intelligence, the first thing that comes to your mind is that everything is AI. Like if I start with my phone in the morning, it's AI. But it's not necessary. You have to do the work. You have to put your phone on, you have to press the buttons, and then you can leverage the value. But at the same time, it is important to understand, differentiate between what is AI and what is not AI. Everything that is around is not necessarily AI. For example, if you're going to a shop and buying something in a kiosk, self-serving kiosk, that's not AI. That's a simple automation process to make your life easier if you don't want to queue. So there are lots of things around us which are not artificial intelligence. And to learn artificial intelligence, the first thing to understand is what is not AI. What is AI is yes, it mimics human minds, it mimics human tasks, it automates things, yes, but to understand what is not AI helps us to understand the limitations of AI. And I always, when I teach during the first sessions, when I teach my students, has any one of you watched the Age of AI, the YouTube series? There's a very nice YouTube series on the Age of AI. There are 6 episodes, and I recommend that you watch the series. It's a documentary style series, but it's a very interesting one. It gives you a whole it's a whole lot of information about the limitations of AI, not just the capabilities. So this is something I recommend everyone to watch if you of course have time, and if you're not just not bored of watching Netflix. So so what is not AI? There are things, traffic lights, perhaps if it's not a smart home, even if it's a smart home, the lights in our home, the refrigerator, the oven, basic things. These are not AI. Artificial intelligence, there are certain things, of course, is AI. If you're looking at, if you're going to a shop and if you are using your bank cards, and for fraud detection, the bank is using some form of AI, some form of AI algorithms. Yes, those are the things, but not everything around us is AI. And the word AI has been used a lot. And there is a difference between AI and automation. Automation is something that for not necessarily has to use AI. You can automate something by just digitizing the processes. Not necessarily you have to use an AI algorithm to digitize the process. After digitizing a process, if you use AI algorithm, then you can create some value. If you can predict something, you can prescribe something, but that is a different field. That's not related to automating a process. But on that note, we have to, when we are looking at AI, we look at data, because AI, artificial intelligence, depends on data. So data is the asset for the business. It's the key ingredient. Whenever you're running an AI algorithm or AI technique or AI model, you need data in order to get some output. And big data, I call big data because now it's a lot of data that are collected by different types of companies, different types of governmental and non-governmental organizations. So big data is the asset. And to collect big data, we have in the 21st century, we have made a lot of innovations in the case of with sensor technologies, nanotechnologies, that these sensors can collect the data and communicate with each other. So that's how the data is generated. Our smartphone generates so much data, and it's a kind of big data. And this data is used in the AI models and algorithms to generate outputs that will facilitate decision making based on what you see in the output. And to all this, so all the big data and the AI methods and the IoT sensors, they leverage cloud technology, cloud computing, in order to store the information, in order to analyze the information. So if we merge all these things together, like big data, Internet of Things, AI methods, and cloud, then we get the whole framework of how AI will actually work in a real life environment. So each of these, I would say, each of these technologies are equally important for AI to work in a very efficient manner. Which brings us to the Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, a term which was coined in 2015 and comes from Germany, and mainly used in the manufacturing sector, that the machines are connected with each other and they share the information through the connections. The connection is the internet connectivity. Share the information through the cloud, which is analyzed by the artificial intelligence algorithms in order to make intelligent decisions for these machines. And these machines can make those decisions. These machines leverage the output of AI to make the decisions in some occasions, or the decisions are made by the human worker who are responsible for those machines. So the idea of the whole thing is that where AI falls in is the intelligent system. In case of intelligent systems, yeah, we can connect something, the information is shared, but to create value from the information that will help the businesses, help the society, or to capture value from the stakeholders' perspective, the intelligent systems are being used. And one of the key outputs, or one of the key what we say performance indicators is in 2020 is for businesses to become sustainable. That means they have they have their financial profits and gains, but at the same time they become lean. That means they manage the waste management is optimized, and they become green because the initiatives they make are more greener. But again, based on the data, based on the output of the AI algorithms, they want to optimize their processes. Now, these specific Industry 4.0 is a term and is I will say consolidated technologies are used in manufacturing sector, mainly manufacturing sector. They are also used in other sectors, but primarily the focus is on manufacturing. So I'll just look if there are any questions. So at this stage, before we move on, do you have any questions? Anyone? No questions. Please put your questions. Please give your views. If anything you want to ask, if anything you want to say, I just put it out there, because from the next slide onwards, it's all about what you're going to say, because the next slides will be related to the workshop activity. Please do put your questions. I am going to look at them from time to time and answer them. Okay. While you think about questions, I'm going to show you two videos. The first video is the IBM Watson. IBM Watson is the AI supercomputer that IBM has developed. It won a Jeopardy game against human, and this was, I think, 5-6 years ago. And then a couple of years ago, the IBM Watson lost a debate to a human. So these are one is winning against human and one is losing against human. So what I will do is that I will play the first video, which is the Jeopardy game, and I would, while you are looking at the video, I want you to think, why did AI, or in this case the IBM Watson, won against the human in this game? For the first video, I would like you to, while you're seeing the video, think about why did it win against the human. So let me stop sharing my screen, and let me share okay. Share. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is the first video where IBM Watson and the Jeopardy challenge, and you think about while you see the video, why did it win?
I remember that morning going to the lab, and I was thinking, this is it. This is the last Jeopardy game.
This is Jeopardy, the IBM Challenge.
Here we go. Brad, if you're ready, make your first choice.
Let's take alternate meanings for 200, Alex.
Four-letter word for a vantage point or a belief. Brad.
What is a view?
Yes.
After the first clue of the game, which Brad won, I had just this horrible feeling at that moment that he was as good as everyone said he was, and he was just going to run the whole board on us.
Watson.
What is shoe?
You are right.
We actually took the lead. We were ahead of them, but then we started getting some questions wrong.
Watson.
What is leg?
No, I'm sorry, I can't accept that.
What is 1920s?
No.
What is chic?
No, sorry. Brad.
What is class?
Class, you got it. Watson.
What is Sauron?
Sauron is right, and that puts you into a tie for the lead with Brad.
The Double Jeopardy round of the first game, I thought was phenomenal.
Watson went on a tear.
Watson.
Who is Franz Liszt?
You are right.
What is violin?
Good.
Who is the church lady?
Yes. Watson.
What is narcolepsy?
You are right, and with that, you move to $36,681.
The risk was Ken gets a daily double, bets big, gets it right. He's going to be well ahead. And then with that kind of lead going into Final Jeopardy, if he bets enough, he could end up winning the match.
Ken.
What's a committee?
We got to find that last daily double. We got to find that last daily double.
It was a crucial moment in the game. There was still a daily double on the board, and it was starting to become pretty clear that it was in the legal ease category. Let's go to legal ease for 1,200.
Watson.
What is executor?
Right.
Same category, 1,600.
Answer, daily double.
That was the moment when I knew it's over.
The category is 19th century novelists.
What Watson wants to do then is preserve the lead, not take a big risk, especially with Final Jeopardy, because just like for humans, Final Jeopardy is hard for Watson.
Now we come to Watson, who is Bram Stoker, and the wager. Hello, 17,973, and a two-day total of 77,147.
I would have thought that technology like this was years away, but it's here now. I have the bruised ego to prove it.
My past Jeopardy experiences have been great, but they weren't really weighty with this kind of technological, philosophical importance. I think we saw something important today.
Didn't really think very much about the implications until later and say, wow, wait a second, this is history.
Of course, this whole project is not ultimately about playing Jeopardy. It's about doing research and deep analytics and a natural language understanding. This is about taking the technology and applying it to solve problems people really care about. We're just so excited about all the things we can do with this.
I had thought this is the end. We get there, we're done. And I'm realizing it's just the beginning.
So, I will go to the slide here. So IBM Watson won the Jeopardy game against the humans. So the Jeopardy game is like they give you a statement, and you have to frame the right question that aligns to the statement. So Watson won the game against the humans. Why did you think Watson win? Anyone?
Comparing it to a debate, you can just get the answers from a kind of knowledge base, whereas with the debate, it's more emotions that are involved. And
okay, so that's a very interesting take, Tara. So you are saying that it's just about having a knowledge base of everything, and then use the computing power in order to frame questions from the knowledge base. And of course, the computing power of a supercomputer is more than a human mind. So that's one. Is that what you're saying?
And it can get better over time.
Yeah, it can get better over time because of the machine learning. It can learn from its mistakes, and it won't repeat probably the same mistakes again in a game. So anyone else who wants to add something? So the interest, so I agree with her on this, the analytical capability of AI, that AI has analytical capability that it can analyze volume, it can analyze the volume of data it has and better than human, and it is good at it. And the idea of leveraging AI technologies is to make life easier for the human workers. That means AI can analyze a lot of data, AI can analyze a lot of information, and they can present in a summarized way the responses which the human can look at in order to make decisions. So of course they have high analytical capabilities. And then Peter says the quality of research from IBM to understand what AI is capable of. Yes. When in 2010, 2012, when they started developing the IBM Watson, what they knew that one of the things AI or the technology is good at is its analytical capability to analyze vast sources of information, which human mind can do, which we can do, but it will take a lot of time. It's not efficient. So they can do it in a much more efficient manner. So that's right. So when IBM they targeted initially the analytical capability, but IBM Watson was deployed in Wimbledon in the tennis tournament, if I'm not wrong, in 2017-18. In order to see human emotions, in order to train it for human emotions. So that was something that was done by IBM Watson after, because now when they used the Jeopardy, they were only looking at textual pieces of information, text. But in order to train IBM Watson for emotions, for not facial recognition, emotions, for sentiments, it was used in Wimbledon, and it was quite, they got a vast data source for their backend to train the AI, but at the same time, they had one small issue with analyzing faces and detecting emotions. Can anyone tell me what that issue might have been? So they were...
You mean detecting emotions, is it?
Detecting emotions from human faces.
In terms of the debate?
In terms of, no, not in terms of the debate. In terms of, in general, if you are detecting human emotions from faces using AI, there are a number of technical and non-technical issues that that a company organization can face. But there is one specific issue that they will have to address in one way or the other.
You mean the labels of the emotion on the training data?
Yes.
Might not be accurate, is it?
Yeah, firstly, the labels on the training data may not be accurate. That's one thing. The second thing is how they are going to use it for different purposes, because there is a big privacy issue with human faces. We have seen Facebook were sued at least 3 times in last 12 years on using faces of people to automatically tag them. Facebook has faced this issue already. So when IBM started looking at emotions and human emotions, one of the things is that how can they develop privacy preserving mechanisms within AI? It's a very open topic. It's a very, I won't say a well-researched topic from technical perspective, but a very well discussed topic. So because there are privacy implications of using human faces, tagging them, or using the emotions of one face to detect the emotions of another face, like using the training data to detect the emotions of the test data. So there is a privacy issue here. And that is one thing they came across in IBM Watson in 2018. So what they call is that facial recognition is not something that IBM has done a lot. They have done other things, but not necessarily facial recognition. There was a question on, I have been looking in the effects of having poor data in creating your AI and generally having inaccurate assumptions when creating AI, especially neural networks. My question is, what are your thoughts on things like quality management when creating AI? Is it just around bad data or are there other issues? Now, the question was asked by Yogan. Hopefully I got the pronunciation correct. Yogan, the thing is, bad data, good data, bad quality data will give bad outputs. It's garbage in and garbage out. It's one of the key issues with any algorithm, not just AI, any algorithm you're choosing. There are other issues to look out for. The first thing is that when you are using a training data, the training data, the way the labels are used or the way the labels are, way the data is labeled, that is one of the most important things or most important factors, because the labels define, if you're using a let's say you're putting a classification problem where you have a labeled data and then you are going to test it in unlabeled data. The quality of the labels in the data and the accuracy of the labels will determine the quality of the labels in the test data. It's not just about bad data, but the labels in a classification problem. In a clustering problem, it is not necessarily about data. In a clustering problem, it is more about the how your algorithm is managing the data. So how your algorithm is looking at missing values in your data, how your algorithm is taking care of the outliers in the data. Because when we are using any machine learning algorithm, irrespective of if you're looking at a supervised, unsupervised, or deep learning neural networks, you have to think about it from the perspective of, before you can use any of these algorithms, you have to prepare the data, and you have to take care of the missing values and the outliers. And that is something not necessarily every time it's something, it's a must we should be doing that. But if you're getting an outlier, what many people do, that they just get rid of the outlier. But that is not the right thing to do. If you're getting an outlier, then it is an outlier, but then how are you going to cluster it? So that becomes an algorithmic problem rather than a data problem. The other thing about the data, about the issues of bad data, is data leakage. Data leakage is a common problem in most machine learning algorithms, or how we run the algorithms, is that when you're doing machine learning, you have a training set, you have a validation set, and you have a test set. You may have heard more or less about training set and test set, but there is a validation set in between. The validation set is used to choose the correct algorithm, like which algorithm is most efficient for that specific data and for the problem you are taking. Having said that, when you are looking at data leakage basically means that it can mean two things. First is that your training set fully represents your test set. That means the test set that you are using the data to get some kind of output is exactly same or similar to training set. And that means that always you will get a high success rate. That means you will always get excellent results. But there is a problem here. The problem here is that some of your data from training set has moved to the test set. So these two data sets are almost the same, and you get a high output. Another case of data leakage is where you have a training set and you have a test set, but the test set and the training set are miles apart. That it is not an act for those data set or for the test data that you want to get the output for. The training set does not represent the characteristics of the test data. That means it does not accurately reflect on the test data. So there are whatever the training set has. For example, if I take if I want to look at customer experience, okay, I want to see or the next best product for the customer. Let's say take this example. For the next best product for the customer, I want to, my training set should comprise of all the products either the customer has bought or all the products customers who share similar characteristics to our seed customer has bought. Now, if I choose a set of customers who do not represent or who are not related or who do not have similar interest with the what we call is the seed customer, then of course the outputs will be all over the place, and that is something that we see that there is a data leakage in that case. So to answer your question, bad data is fine. Is fine in the sense that there is bad data, there will be bad data. Data won't be apps. The quality of data is a problem because as the volume of data increases, it's the quality of some of the data will decrease. But the issue in that quality of data, what is the issue? Is it the data leakage? If it's an algorithmic issue, that is something that the person who is using AI has to identify. And there are now systems being developed or AI systems being developed to eliminate this issue. So I hope that answers your question to some extent. So what we will do now is that we will move on to the workshop activity, and this is the part where I stop talking and you guys move into the breakout rooms, and you will be in groups of 5 or 6 or more depending on how many people have joined. First, you should start by a small introduction between all the group members in the breakout room, and identify a common AI theme that aligns to your interest, that everyone is interested in some parts of AI. Like we saw, someone is interested in data quality, you might be interested in more in AI trust or something else, and put all your interests in a Google slide. That will be great. And then you can choose one of the following topics and prepare a short pitch, like a 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes pitch. And for the pitch, you have to prepare one slide that just outlining the key message that you want to give in your pitch. And the topics are, the first topic is related to AI and human capital, like human workforce, is that use of AI in organizations will significantly impact human jobs, negatively or positively. So you have to discuss within your team and decide that how it's going to impact the human jobs, and if it's a positive thing or a negative thing. Topic 2 is related to AI trust. Now, we know that some of the companies like IBM, L'Oreal in the fashion industry have used in the past 2 years video interviews for candidate recruitment. So the topic is that your team welcomes the idea of being interviewed by an AI system, and the AI system will make recruitment decisions. Okay, so this thing has already been done. So the question is that are you as a candidate comfortable with you being interviewed by an AI and the AI making a decision whether you should be recruited for the position or not? That's the second topic. And the third topic is it healthy to have only the big players like the technology players like Microsoft, IBM, and Amazon, and all these people to govern the AI design, development, and deployment? We have seen that the AI, what we call is the AI whole development is from the big technology providers, and there is little stake from anyone else we can think of. So is it important to make AI design development more democratic, more open source, rather than just being governed by the top technology providers? So you can choose any of these three topics, and you have to just present for 3 minutes. So I'm asking you to use Google Slides, because if you have a Google account, you can just share your Google Slides. That is much more easier and everyone can access it easily. You can give your own access. Now, before we move on to the workshop, your activity, which will last for around 40 minutes, do you have any questions? So there are 3 topics. You have to choose one topic and you have to pitch on that topic a summary of what you have discussed. Okay, and of course your view on it, whether it's a yes or a no. So if you have any questions, then please do before we move to the breakout room. I would answer them. But at the same time, I will join each breakout room while you are doing the activity to answer any questions and also to listen to some of your discussions. Okay? Does that sound good? Because I will consider it's a very nice afternoon here in Toulouse. It's sunny. It's also sunny at your end. So you have no questions, and we will then move you to the breakout rooms. Is that okay, Margaret?
Yeah, no problem. So you will be divided into 4 groups. So let's go. You should all be invited to join your groups now. Only Mark and only Feda. So I don't know if you guys know in which group you were. I think you know.
Yeah, so group A is Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
It's good. Yep.
Do you want us to run through what we found fascinating about it, or do you want us to just jump straight into the topic?
No, you start with fascinating and then let's go to the topic. We want to know what you find fascinating. So that's also important. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. So when we started off, we kind of just pinpointed some of the things that we found fascinating. So reduced human error, we kind of put the positives maybe on top or the negatives maybe on the bottom. So reduce human error, continuous improvement and evolution, simplify daily tasks, and we found it entertaining. And then in terms then of maybe the negatives, it could lead to unemployment, there's replacement for human interaction, it contributes to laziness possibly, and then there could be a loss of productivity. So when we led on from this, then when we were picking our topics, we found there was a small bit of overlap between what we found fascinating and then maybe the positives and negatives of topic A, or topic 1. So the use of AI in business organizations will significantly impact human jobs. So instead of maybe picking one side of the argument, we said that we would go through both sides and kind of maybe be able to solidify at the end of it what we thought would be the best side to go with. So I think Kira is going to start off with the positives.
Yeah. So in terms of increased productivity, machines are just designed in such a way that they never get tired. They can run 24/7 and just process things like humans can't. So there is a huge argument to suggest that AI is incredibly useful in the workplace in ways that humans just can't work. And then with accuracy, AI tools are again designed to just not make mistakes. And if they do, it's the developer's fault. So using AI and other tools powered by AI can prove to be very effective and efficient, especially if you're working with sensitive data and numbers. And then with reduced human error. So mistakes just happen naturally every day. And there's nothing we can really do about them. They just happen, they're inevitable. But again, machines are designed to not make these mistakes. And although they happen, they can be very costly for businesses, but this is just eliminated with AI machines. So I'll pass you on to Connor.
Yeah, so risks are eliminated from human beings in certain environments with the help of AI and certain robots. And then financially, people can access financial service a lot quicker with AI. And then with data fraud, it can be detected really quickly within milliseconds, because it can detect complex patterns which fraud analysts may not be able to detect it. Someone's going to pass on to me.
Yeah, so we looked at negatives as well. The first one, the loss of human touch. So for example, when a company has a chatbot, instead you'll be talking to a chatbot instead of holding a conversation with a human being. Then costly to implement. Depends on the size of the company. I read something that one company spent over 300 grand implementing an AI system, and then drastically changes how we work. For example, the shopkeeper, they wouldn't be dealing with much cash lately just because of COVID and AI. So a lot of people pay through their phone or tap their card or through smartwatches.
Yeah, and then AI, because it increases the speed of what can be accomplished. In terms of kind of hacking and AI terrorism, it can be hard for humans to actually follow up with us in the same time. So some of this can go on behind the scenes and it can take us a bit longer to notice. And then even though it kind of has the positives with eliminating human error and everything, there's also the negative of the loss of jobs. So that can affect the economy as well. And then lastly, there's no identification of improvements. So unlike humans, if they start a job in their first day and then maybe a few years later, they've improved with experience, this doesn't happen with AI. So it just does the same task repetitively kind of and doesn't improve after every task. And that's our negatives.
That's excellent. It's very well thought. The thing is, you looked at both positives and negatives, and that's good. In the case of loss of human jobs, of course, there will be some loss of human jobs, but as I was discussing with you in a group, there will be creation of new jobs as well. One of the things is that when you look at enhanced accuracy and reduce human error, this are for analytically intensive tasks. This is not for every task, but you mentioned that there are some tasks where they will have enhanced accuracy and reduce human error. Eliminate risk for human beings. It's very interesting because one of the fields where AI is its emerging use is safety science and occupational health. Safety science and occupational health relate to organizations to reduce the accidental risks or accidents within a work environment. So slowly AI is being used to understand to contribute to safety science within work environment and accidental risks, which is quite interesting. But of course, with the business side of things, you clearly pointed out about the fraud detection. It has been used a lot, and we need analytical capabilities and in order to identify the intrusion. That's very well thought. Loss of human touch. The question is that COVID or the pandemic had taught us that we miss socializing. We miss talking to people. We want to go out, hopefully. I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think that it's a general thing that I have read across and found in my students I teach in Toulouse as well, that we want to socialize. And loss of human touch, everything. If you go to a shop, if you're shopping, you need that human touch in order to have a good experience. You need to want to speak to someone, or you want to be treated well. And with AI, how much it is possible, we don't know, but there is routine task, as you pointed out, routine. Like when you call a bank and the banks, and there is a what I say, automated chat or voice bot that gives you like, why did you call, and you give a rule-based answer and they transfer your call. Those kind of tasks, yes, but that won't lead to job loss. That will lead to the person who was supposed to do that task to some more creative and intuitive tasks, which are not trivial, which is not just about transferring calls to the right person. So that is not a job loss, but it is more about process efficiency, making the process more efficient. So very good. So very well done. Sure. Do you have any questions, the team, or we shall move to the next team? Any questions from Group A? All good. Group B, we have Jason, Ewan, Neil.
Yeah, that's us.
Yep.
I can just share screens now, 2 seconds. Can you see that there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we chose the topic 3, which is on the kind of the idea of AI democratization and whether we are for or against it. So a kind of a small introduction, AI democratization is the idea that everyone gets access to and the opportunity to use artificial intelligence tools. Currently, organizations such as Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM hold a lot of the power over these tools and resources, but discussions have kind of begun to arise around the idea of democratizing them and making them kind of open access to people. So I, with part 1 here, began to look at the idea, look at this kind of point from the perspective of training. So depending on the AI tools or platforms being democratized, someone without the proper training and knowledge of how to control the artificial intelligence runs the risk of creating something that is dangerous or used for negative purposes. But the democratization of these tools could also provide opportunities for people to gain the knowledge and training that they need without having to be part of these big players as well. So there is pros and cons in the training perspective. So overall, we believe it will depend heavily on the goals and the purpose of the person who wishes to use them and whether they're willing to gain the appropriate knowledge and training they need to use them correctly. And I'll now hand you over to Niall.
Yeah, so I looked at the concept of data governance. We believe it's very important that company leaders need to establish clarity on the ownership and control of data that is fed into AI-powered platforms and on how rights relate to the insights generated. So when data is collected for a specific AI program and used for other applications, it's easy to lose visibility into data's origins. As a group, we feel there should be increased data governance in the design, development, and deployment of AI from big players like Google, IBM, and Amazon, especially when discussing topics like shadow AI, which is AI created using data, not governed by teams within an organization. So for increased data governance, we believe AI models should be built using data that is monitored and secured. So I'll pass you on to Oisin now.
Yeah, so I took this perspective that governing the algorithmic models will facilitate the democratization of AI, as we feel that controls need to be in place to ensure that the models are being developed with validation metrics, such as maybe a balance of accuracy or fairness, and also the ability to be explained. So we feel that this avoids the development of AI models whose results are biased or can't easily be explained. And we then concluded that this acts as a cautionary approach, as organizations have often said data governance is part of their corporate compliance activity, but very few are monitoring the other elements involved in an AI system as closely as they should. So I'll pass you on to Jason now.
So yeah, I look at number 4 there, which was intellectual property rights. So at the minute, the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, and Google, they're gaining a huge competitive advantage because they're not sharing their intellectual property they're gaining from their AI. It's basically becoming a monopoly. So we feel that this is preventing entrepreneurship and new startups in terms of AI, and it's preventing new developments, and it's kind of slowing down AI's development as a whole. So I'll pass you on to Owen now for number 5.
Yeah, so
the logo I used, it's from an open source website around software. So the topic I'll be talking about around democratization of AI is around open source. So like without infringing on people's privacy, there's an argument that these companies should make what they've done open source. If cutting edge AI is developed with its understanding in the hands of the few, we can stifle innovation. If we don't know what's behind, you know, the curtain of AI, then like there's very little trust in the whole thing as well. So as well as this, with added transparency, there will be more trust in those creating AI. If we start depending on these AI software for our day-to-day lives, but we don't understand what's behind them, or it's all, you know, a black box, there's very little trust in the whole thing. And then sort of to conclude the 5 points that we've made around the benefits of data, or around AI democratization, is the film The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, where Martin Scorsese and his team had spent, I think, millions of dollars trying to create, to make Robert De Niro look a lot younger, using artificial intelligence or something along those lines. And it cost them a lot of money. But I think like a kid with a laptop was able to make it even look more realistic. The results from this kid using artificial intelligence was a lot more effective than the money that they spent. And that was because that the software was open source. I mean, the kid didn't create the software himself or herself, but the fact that it was open source allowed sort of, it's a good example of what can be done when we democratize artificial intelligence. There are some downsides, of course, but we feel that, sort of in conclusion, that along these 5 metrics, that if we get these 5 things right, then we'd be very much in favor of like AI democratization.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. And I think everything you said about specifically the Martin Scorsese example of The Irishman, we discussed it while we were in the group. Like, it shows that it's not about, you don't have to be a software programmer in order to leverage the AI, but rather you have to understand what you're trying to do. So that guy who was doing, he knew about graphics design, and that was the main thing. It was not about AI, was just the application. But the important part here is, one of the things that comes out of AI democratization, and which has not been talked a lot, is entrepreneurship. There should be more entrepreneurial initiatives where there could be AI entrepreneurs who will not only develop and design the AI, but who will make it more transparent and more, it will, what we call is the responsible innovation, that it is not dominated by the top or big players. And one of the things that we are seeing now, and we have been seeing, is that Tesla is slowly entering the AI market. They haven't been able to enter the AI market before. And irrespective of whether we like the Tesla CEO or not, Tesla have tried, and they have tried to have more entrepreneurs, or have a strategy that they have more entrepreneurs and who will be interested in the emerging technologies. So one of the things is that, which is an emerging topic, and that is important, and the governments, the national governments and regulators have to make a decision of how to encourage AI entrepreneurship, because it is not only going to create jobs or income avenues, but it's going to make a difference to how the technology evolves. Like we are looking, if you look at blockchain is leveraged just by IBM. But if they become the superpowers, if these big companies become the superpowers of this technology, then we are going to have the same issues that we had with Facebook, we had with Google, we had with sharing data governance and everything. So AI entrepreneurship is important, and there is a need for, and there is a call for policymakers to make decisions to make it to provide financial incentives to do that, and that's quite important. And entrepreneurship means there can be, it will bring people from different disciplines together. It will bring people from different countries together. It will bring different genders together, different perspectives together, and let it flourish in an open environment, which is not only important for the ethical side for AI, but also inclusiveness of AI. Okay, so that's really, really, really well thought. Let's move to Group C. Group C, Mark, Peter, two Ronans, Samantha, Peter.
Yeah, I'll just share screen now. Just let me know when you can see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so what we chose to look at for our presentation was the use of AI and how it impacts human jobs. And what we found interesting was maybe the different perceptions of how this is considered. So if you're a graduate with like a degree in IS or a degree in development or an interest in analytics, obviously you're going to see it differently to someone who's been working in the same job for 20 or 30 years, and the rate at which this transition is going to happen and the different players involved. So it was a kind of a common interest in the group, and then we started talking about the different industries this affects. So one of the quotes we found was actually down at the bottom. So Ronan, I think, is going to talk you through that, and then some of the market industries that it involves.
Yeah, I'll just run you through some of the figures that we found, and these are all job losses related to artificial intelligence. And the World Economic Forum started that 75 million could lose their jobs because of it by 2025. That figure went up in another company. IoT said 400 million people will lose their jobs. And eventually we found one with PwC said that the 800 million people could lose their jobs by 2030. Now, we have to say as well that to us, this seems like an extremely high number, and we think there's a tiny bit of fear mongering going on as well with this. But one of the quotes there as well, that 375 million people may need to change careers or kind of reskill. And it does sound like a positive thing, but will that be afforded to everyone? Our main concern was kind of the lower skilled people or people in low income areas. Will they be offered the same opportunities to reskill or train? And the other one was like, with one of the things that they anticipate that it will be good for bigger corporations, that they're going to have massive opportunities and they're going to invest heavily in this in the next few years. But although it is positive for the companies and maybe organizations, our big fear is just the lower skilled workers. And we just want to finish, we feel like there is a lot of misinformation and fear at the minute out there at the moment of AI coming in. So I'll just pass you on over to Mark now to continue on.
Yeah, so then the graph on the right is just an example of how AI will impact an industry, and an industry that we saw is going to be clearly impacted is the transport and automotive industry, where we're already seeing electric AI cars such as Tesla come into the market, and Tesla are now branching into electric trucks, which will severely impact the transport of goods and truck drivers' jobs. And while a lot of them will be made unemployed, it will also create some jobs with regards looking after the AI technology, but we feel that it would still have a severe impact on those truck drivers and people with those jobs, because not all of them will be able to go back and reskill or will have the ability to learn how to work with AI technologies. And it may leave a big gap in the economy and a big gap in a lack of, like, where do these people go and where do they work if they lose what they're good at, like truck driving. So while there are both good and bad sides of AI, we kind of focused on the bad sides in our point here. But we do understand that while it will take jobs, it will also create jobs for people who are specialized to look after AI. So that kind of concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. I think that one of the things for autonomous vehicles is that there is a lot of popularity, a lot of things in the media, but autonomous vehicles have not been popular. One important thing you have to realize is that acceptance of autonomous vehicles in the society is important. Like drones, Amazon drones, it didn't work. Like they are trying, but there are lots of regulations around it for which it's not feasible in the current stage. Autonomous vehicles also has the same thing. There is of course Tesla is developing it, and we saw the very famous we saw lots of videos and marketing campaigns, but there is a difference between marketing and reality. Societal acceptance is important. I don't know if I'll give you an example. Have you ever heard of Google Glass? Google Glass. So Google Glass, so they said I was working with Google Glass when 2010, 2013. 2013, Google Glass, lots of pilot projects. Google Glass is like a glass that you can wear, and instead of having your mobile phone, you can see everything in the glass. It was not accepted by the society. The whole project failed, and Google Glass basically was they stopped the Google Glass project because they realized that Google Glass can be used more in maybe in a different sector, in a different way. The application was incorrect. So similarly, autonomous, anything, the society has to accept it. If the society thinks that you know what, autonomous vehicles are not safe, autonomous vehicles have major issues, it won't accept it. So there will be no job losses. So we have to think about that, whether society is going to accept those, or we as a society, we are going to accept those things or not. So that is very important. But yes, there will be job losses. There will be white collar, some white, some blue job losses. There will be new jobs created. But as you said about the misinformation, fear mongering, no one knows what's going to happen. The only thing we can do is that we can teach ourselves, or the educational institutions can make a commitment that they put educational programmings looking at the future, not looking at the past. So they start upskilling and reskilling from now, not after 3 years, because it will evolve. Things have to evolve. So there is one thing that can be done, but we will see. And which brings us to our group D. And yeah, so group D, let me see. Tara, Sue, Tom, Shane.
Can you see the
yes.
slides?
Yes.
So we picked topic 2. We talk about how AI system and the processes in the recruitment system, recruitment decision, and what we think, and we talk about the impact of it and the concerns and our experience in dealing with interviewing with AI systems. So Tom is going to start talk about the business perspective.
Yeah, so the business perspective for the AI impact, I suppose it dramatically reduces costs for interviews because they don't obviously have to pay humans to do it. It also removes human bias from the interview process, and it fine-tunes desired candidates. So when they've like a massive amount of people applying, they just specifically pick a certain number of traits that they want their workers to have, and it just completely narrows down the interview process. I'll pass you on to Shane now for the candidate perspective.
Yeah, so from the perspective of the candidate, it's convenient, so they can, conduct the interview wherever they are at whatever time they want. But the downside to that for them is that often they won't get any feedback at all because they can't kind of read like body language cues from the interviewer, or they might not receive any like follow-up feedback at all. But the other flip side to that is sometimes companies do send out the feedback, so it's kind of a mixed bag. And then there's also the fear of bias in the selection process. So it kind of goes both ways for the candidate versus what the business might view as the benefit. So I'll pass you over to Tara now, who'll go through the business concerns.
So, because the algorithms are created by humans, there's always going to be an element of bias in them. And that can result in monoculture in hiring systems, because if there's one mistake in the algorithm and it just hires all people with the whichever, like I know Amazon had a few years ago, they had a mistake where any candidate that had the word women's on their resume was just excluded from the selection process. And then another concern for businesses would be if they have a negative candidate experience, that can be detrimental for the company, because a few years ago, Virgin Media, they had a very bad candidate experience, the interview process, and they ended up losing over £4 million because people would just unsubscribe to all their services after the interview. And now I'll pass you on to Shamey.
So I looked at the concerns the candidate had about the hiring process. So first of all, the lack of human touch, so it's kind of unnatural and slightly awkward to be talking to machines rather than what would be used to of like interacting with humans. Secondly, having to optimize the CV for the hiring algorithm was another concern. We've heard stories personally of including certain phrases or excluding certain phrases just based on the algorithm, because if they see a certain thing, they might exclude it or include it. So there's no margin for error when you're writing up the CVs for the candidates. And then lastly is ghosting, similar to what Shane was discussing earlier about the feedback that companies give to people sometimes, that the AI machines don't give any feedback on how you did during the process. So we found that a bit troublesome. I'll pass you on to Sean now to talk about the experience.
So most of us would have experience in the interviewing with these AI systems, and there are definitely some positives, like we have more time in preparing the answers, and it's more or less stressful for us. Like we're more comfortable with talking about ourselves without anyone behind the camera. But sometimes we're also concerned about the lack of feedback. And yeah, so that's basically what we think about the entire topic on the recruitment process with AI.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Yeah, candidate recruitments, they are having video interviews, audio interviews. I think you said Virgin Media did it. L'Oreal did it last 2018-19. IBM did it 2019-20. There is a whole white paper of IBM on this video recruitment. You have pointed all the right issues, and I look at a positive and negative. The bigger issue is that there is a difference between interviewing and selection. So yes, during an interview, you can have AI ask questions based on the candidate CV and based on the everything, the data they have, that's fine. But making a decision is a human touch, because you are not recruiting a machine. You're recruiting a human being who has to integrate within the team, has to share the same values as the company, the mission of the company, have to understand the company environment and the culture. So these are the things that the AI may not be able to make a decision on that. And it's tough. But at the same time, there is a thing about inclusivity. There is a thing about how will you sensitively address the candidates who have some form of cognitive disability or any physical other forms of disability which we cannot see. So AI won't take that into account. And if there are some candidates, AI when making the decision that there is no feature of this candidate in the training data set, that's what we are calling about poor quality data. It's not poor quality data, but this candidate is absolutely unique, then what will happen? And if you are having a job interview and it's in a different language, then AI is not helpful, because AI can do English and some other languages, but not all. So there is a language barrier as well for AI as well. The thing which I fear about these interviews is that you can beat the system without being the good candidate. That means if you know how the AI works, and if you can decipher how the AI works, then you can beat the system. You can just put on the best act and you will get through the interviews. So the Oscar performance. So you can beat AI in this way, and it is beatable, and people have done that and they have tested it, how it can be done. So, and like as you mentioned, that you have to put certain keywords, you have to put certain things. If it's a video interview, you have to speak in certain way, you have to speak slowly, you have to put on a emotion that is more positive. So it's not, then the recruitment process is not about your skills. Recruitment process is about how you present yourself, but that's not, it's just about, that's a small part of recruitment, not everything. So there are pros and cons, but when you go for an interview and if you think it is good, because some of you may have already gone for it, then of course. But I personally think that it is something, it's still a work in progress. Yeah, it saves time at the initial screening stage. Lots of applications, lots of online applications. At that stage, it's very useful that AI can do a screening automatically, which is being done already in many cases. But in the later stages, you need human involvement, because interviews are not just about recruiting someone and everyone. Interviews about skills, about your integration, about the culture, about your values, about how you express yourselves. It's important. So very interesting presentations from everyone. Can I request if you can share the slides with us, if it is okay with you, if you share the slides, because they were very interesting. With Margaret. Margaret, is it possible for them to email you the slides?
Yeah, of course. I will give you in the chat box the email to which you can send your slides, so that I can share them with them right after that. So
yeah, and finally, as we come to the end of this session, which has run off by 4 minutes. One thing I will say is that artificial intelligence, we say, is AI, is about also accountability and innovation. So you have to be accountable, like everyone pointed out. Like accountability is so important, the governance is so important, the trust is important, the transparency is important, and innovation. Everything will innovate and evolve with time, but the innovation has to be responsible, has to be inclusive, and what we call is democratic. And because our one of the group B really pointed out that why it should be democratic. And in-house capability is important. To develop the skills from now on is important, and it is looking at what will happen in the future, not looking at the past, but looking at the future, anticipating the future. Now, the workshop was titled Symbiotic Intelligence. If you look at all your slides and whatever you said, at every point of time, you mentioned tasks which AI cannot do, which humans have to do. For example, in the case of governance, for example, in the case of recruitment, for example, also in the case of jobs. There are some jobs that AI can do, some it cannot do. Never underestimate the human mind, because our skills, what we have, our intuition, the ability to think, how creative we can be, this is something that is unique from person to person. You are good at something which no one can take away from you. You are unique in your own way, and that uniqueness, that creativity, that intuition cannot, at this stage, in this form, is not there in AI. So humans and AI have to coexist in one way or the other. And the question for us will be how they can coexist. And the question is, at this stage, unanswered, but there are some answers which are cropping up, that they have to leverage the analytical capabilities of AI and creativity of humans. And that's the important part, because we are unique in our own way, that no one can take it from us. So that brings us to the end of this session. I will send the slides. There is a very interesting, if you want to have some fun, there is a very interesting website which came up last year during COVID, that you can generate memes for any image you put up using this meme generator. It uses some form of machine learning. So if you can read about it, but it's a very interesting meme generator. I have used it a lot to put on memes on coasters and coffee cups and everywhere. So there, it's quite fun. So you can choose it. Thank you very much for all your very insightful presentations and discussions we had in the breakout rooms. It was a pleasure, and I hope that you learned a bit and reflected a bit more on AI beyond what you thought AI was. Thank you.